Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Life in the Red podcast. Luke Mullin and Amie Just coming at you as usual. Back at it again after the bye week, which was, I think I speak for both of us, it was really nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nice in terms of just like calming down, like just taking time to relax. Like I made gumbo, ran a half marathon, so like not laborious tasks, but it was nice just to like take a break and reset and do things that bring me joy. So
Absolutely. And I mean, the season just gets so hectic, for everyone involved. Obviously the team, fans, everyone, it's a consistent, grind all the time. So having a few days, even just a few, I think it means a lot to everybody, especially the team. We heard that just talking to them, that it was a good chance to recharge the batteries, reset a little bit.
Yeah, give your body a little bit of a break before the last 5 weeks of the season.
Absolutely, and we'll get into that. We'll get into all the football talk here in a bit, but I think first order of business to talk about, we're going to get into the schedule release too, but before we do that, the volleyball team, sorry, I've neglected, to include a few volleyball segments in the last couple weeks, but, they've just been winning. They've just been on a tear. That changed a little bit last night. So yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, Wisconsin, they just have Nebraska's number, don't they?
Yeah, and it's not just like it's one person in particular from Wisconsin. Like the old cliche goes, that the faces change, but still winning, still dominating, and even though Nebraska was number one, it didn't quite look like it last night. There were just plenty of times where they just looked lost and not up to the caliber of play that we are all so used to seeing from them.
Yeah.
Outside of Becca Alex, she played pretty great.
Yeah. And worth noting, she had team high 13 kills in the match. Nobody else had more than 7, which obviously, playing out of the middle, you can make a big impact. But, you want your outside hitters usually to be the ones leading the offense. So, something to look at in terms of adjustments. But, really, I thought it was those first 2 sets, it was just such a tight margin. The first one, just a slight tip on the block, gives the set to Wisconsin. And then, the second one, obviously, Badgers raced out to quite a big start. Nebraska almost came all the way back, just couldn't quite get that second set. And, the third one kind of rolls over in that instance usually.
Yeah, as I'm sitting on my couch last night watching the second set, and it's 22-12, and you're like, oh no, the train has completely come off the tracks. This is a disaster. And then little by little, Nebraska chips back, and you're like, all right, we see some fight. And then they tie it up. And I'm just like, okay, what's happening here? And then, of course, Wisconsin wins the next 2 points and ends the set. And you just didn't see that fight from Nebraska for a whole lot longer in that third. And sometimes it comes down to it. You have to. Sometimes you just play ugly, but you got to win when you're playing ugly and find ways to win. And Nebraska it wasn't happening for them last night.
Yeah, and, honestly, it was a little bit of a taste of their own medicine because Nebraska had won 19 straight sets, swept quite a few opponents in a row heading into that one. So, Wisconsin, brings them back down to earth a little bit. But, top 5 teams, both these programs are going to have, big postseason expectations. Obviously, Wisconsin coming off a great year. A lot of new players, but, they still have that winning mentality. I thought it was a great crowd there that they had, too, for that match as well. But Nebraska will have the chance to get right. 2 home matches against Indiana and Maryland. And, of course, circle your calendars. Wisconsin comes to the Devaney on November 25th.
Yeah, Nebraska fans are going to have to pick what they want to do that day because that's the Black Friday football game against Iowa. And then, Wisconsin Part 2 here in Lincoln. And
there's a World Cup USA soccer match on that day, which I will be greatly disappointed to be missing as we watch an exciting game of Iowa football, but we'll get there in due time.
You couldn't even keep a straight face when saying that.
No, definitely not. Well, the good news is 2023 schedule finally out. We were waiting a little bit, to hear about it because it had been set and then it had kind of been taken back. A little bit of mystique involved with it. So
yeah, and some of that comes down to the NCAA came down with a ruling not too terribly long ago that divisions aren't required and all of that. And the Big Ten decided, well, do we want divisions? Turns out they're going to keep the divisions for 2023, but that's why the schedule was originally pulled and, revamped a little bit. Not a whole lot of changes. Some dates moved around, but all the opponents are the same for Nebraska as they were on the original one, which is good, I suppose. 3 crossover opponents. You've got Michigan, Michigan State, and Maryland lucking out there with, not having Ohio State and Penn State.
Absolutely.
You get only one of the 3-headed monster from the East. It's a win, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it sets up pretty favorably. Again, obviously teams will change. The portal has made it very difficult, to project this far out. But obviously, those powers, those are the ones that you expect to have that top 25 ranking be right there. I think what's interesting is opening the season a little bit early again. Thursday night game at Minnesota. That's going to be a tough test going on the road to Minnesota there in week 1.
Yeah, and with a new head coach, whoever that is, probably a bunch of new players, because that's just the way that the last several seasons have turned out, not just for Nebraska, but for college football in general. That's going to be a little interesting, but a silver lining, a positive note, when you're playing on a Thursday is you get Friday, Saturday, Sunday when you wouldn't have had that normally. So that gives a little extra time for whoever the new head coach is a little extra time to review some things, look at what they did well, look at what they didn't, and have more time to prepare for Colorado.
Yep. And non-conference schedule was obviously already set. I think it's kind of crazy how those things are, scheduled obviously, 6, 7, 8 years in advance,
10,
whatever it is.
11, 12 years
Absolutely.
in advance. Yeah.
Which I get, but, it's still kind of interesting. But, as you mentioned, having to go on the road again in week 2, getting a few extra days at home, I think in between that will, help calm the nerves maybe a little bit or whatever. But Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech home games, the other 2 non-conference. And bye week coming exactly midway through the season, 6 games in, 6 games to go. That's a pretty nice break in the action.
Yeah, you'd love to see that. The earliest bye week any Big 12 team has, I think, is in like week 5 or 6. And then, which is way too early.
For sure.
And then some teams have it in the 5th to last week of the season, so then they only have 4 games to go. Like, that's too late, too. So Nebraska, I think, lucked out there, and it's right in the middle of your season. You have only a couple road games after that, which is a bonus because of the back-to-back road games to open the season. They don't have another back-to-back road stretch at all through the rest of the season, which, again, a positive.
Yeah, and I think so it's combined with, the bye week, times in between, 1 road game and a 7-week stretch, after that.
That's so positive for Nebraska.
Absolutely.
That's what you want. Yes, have you opened the Big Ten slate on the road for now, 6 years in a row? Yes. But when you look at the opposite of that and you see, you're going to be at home for almost 2 full months. Yeah. It's great.
That'll give them a lot of, presuming that, they can get winning, that gives you a lot of momentum, staying at home like that. And the home games on the schedule, Michigan, Northwestern, Purdue, Maryland, and Iowa. The road games, obviously Minnesota there in week 1, Illinois, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. So, 2023 schedule released, fully good to go. We'll look forward to 2024 in a year, see how the California schools enter the mix, what the heck the Big Ten will decide to do. That'll be interesting to see, won't it?
I'm very ready for California. I'm ready.
That's right, and especially let's see if they can get that in October or November or something. I mean that's going to be a lucrative travel package for many fans. So.
Can't wait. I personally can't wait. I'm sure everyone is the same, but
I've never been to California. Have you?
Yes.
Yes.
Many times. Yes, I was there earlier this year for the Super Bowl.
Oh, nice. Okay. Casual flex here on the podcast, but it's
I've had a pretty eventful year in terms of just like wild things that I've covered. Because I got to cover the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, Final Four in New Orleans, the Ireland game, and then regardless of if Nebraska makes it or not, I will be covering the Final Four in Omaha for volleyball, because that is a thing that you should do. Even if your home team isn't there, I think they will be. Like, I still think they will be.
Yeah.
Like, just because they lost yesterday in a pretty painful fashion, I do not think the sky is falling. It happens. No, we just have to see how they bounce back. But yeah, I've had a pretty interesting year.
Yeah, I think maybe a good off-season pod. We can go over some of those mini crazy football games that you've covered. Montana, New Orleans, I mean, all over. It's never a an easy quick game or day for you, huh?
I do not know what it is like to not be in constant chaos at all times.
Yeah.
This season included.
Indeed.
In that, of course. Speaking of chaos, Illinois.
Yes, big game coming to town, and kind of interesting. I mean, before the season, would anybody have circled this as a key game in the Big Ten West?
No. I said before the season that this is an easy win. I'm dumb.
I think my preseason prediction, I think I said Nebraska would win this one too. I think I also predicted them to be 8-4, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah,
right
everyone
now.
was giving me grief for saying 6-6, 7-5, and yet here we are. So.
Indeed. But, I mean, it's been a really impressive turnaround from this Illinois team. Improved just in every facet of the game this year. And, I take it back to that Week 2 game against Indiana, too. I mean, a 3-point loss isn't horrible, but Indiana was very bad last year.
They're very bad this year.
Yeah, they haven't shown improvements other than winning that game this year. So, at the time, you think Illinois loses this game. They're kind of in that same, cellar-dweller status, but the 23 points that they allowed Illinois in that one, by far the most they've allowed all year, and just a team that's built on defense. Quick statistic: they're scoring 26 points a game, below average. That's number 85 in the nation, but their defense, number 1 overall, 8.9 points allowed per game. I mean, that's
insane.
Yeah.
Now, granted, right? They've played Wyoming, Indiana, Virginia, Chattanooga, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. So not like the pinnacle of everything that you want an offense to be. So I think that, yes, their defense is nothing to sneeze at. They're really good, but also Nebraska will be the best offense that they've faced this season. So it'll be interesting. I still don't think Nebraska pulls it off, but I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, agreed. And I think a major reason why it's going to be such a challenge for Nebraska is, of course, the Illini pass rush. I mean, we've seen teams that might not have elite pass rushers, that might not be, the sack production talents, and they've done a good job against Nebraska because pass protection is not the strength of this offensive line.
No.
It's an area where they get beat quite frequently, and Illinois is a team that beats opposing offensive lines very frequently. Top 15 national mark, 23 sacks this season. And not just from one player either. 4 different Illinois players with either 3.5 or 4 sacks this season. So they're going to rotate these guys in. They're going to be fresh, ready to go. This is their bread and butter, to get after the quarterback and make sure those passing games don't get going.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, I think, in that regard.
Yeah.
A lot of checkdowns, I imagine.
Yes, get the ball out quick. That's going to be...
Lots of checkdowns.
I'm still wondering all year, are we ever going to see the return of the bubble screen? The swing pass, I mean, where have they gone?
I'm not a huge fan of the bubble screen.
I know.
I think Montana and the Saints just run it far too often, so I feel like I'm scarred for life. But if it works, it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
I don't think that's a Mark Whipple concept. So
I don't think
that's
so.
That's why we haven't seen it so far this year.
But yeah, no, lots of checkdowns, I imagine, this week, or if not, lots of sacks.
Yep, it can happen.
If it can, we've seen it.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's going to be an interesting challenge then on the other side of the ball. Tommy DeVito having a really good year. He's been careful with the football. Only 2 interceptions, 10 touchdowns, I think, so far this year, 1,400 yards. So, he's not necessarily a guy who they need to go out there and, throw 30, 35 times a game. It's because Chase Brown will go out there and run it 30, 35 times a game. He had 41 carries, I think, against Minnesota, like 45 total touches. I mean, he's a workhorse.
Yeah, he has had 19 plus in every game, including, because against Minnesota, he had 41 rushes for 180 yards. That's insane. And then against Indiana, 36 rushes for 199 yards.
Yeah.
If Nebraska isn't careful, we're going to see a stat line like that or worse.
Or worse, definitely. I mean, it's a thing where, too, like, why Brown is so effective is, if he can just tear off, a 4-yard carry every time, I mean, that's why they're comfortable giving him the ball 30 times a game. He just pops off quite a few for, 10, 15, 20 yards, and a lot of running backs have done that against Nebraska this year.
Yeah, his full stat line, 192 rushes for 1,059 yards, averaging 5.5 yards per touch.
Number 1 rusher in the nation coming to Lincoln this week. So we will see. Gonna be an interesting one on that side of the ball. See how the run defense has improved. But I think we agree it's going to be the Nebraska offense against the Illinois defense that might dictate how this game goes. Which brings us into our Husker hot topic for this week. That's the question. How can Nebraska break through against the nation's best scoring defense?
Trey Palmer, nation's best receiver.
Trey Palmer, yeah. I mean, it's been a topic all week. It's like Trey Palmer is the offense, essentially. How do they manage without him, or how do they get him open, even when teams try to slow him down?
Yeah, I envision that he'll be bracketed a lot.
Yeah.
But even when you do that, he is so fast. I mean, Mickey Joseph said this week that's the fastest receiver he's ever worked with. And he's worked with some really good, really talented, really speedy receivers. And Jamar is the fastest. It's not even close. So does Illinois have 2 guys in their secondary that can keep up with him? Are there 2 guys on the same team anywhere that can keep up with him?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. But he's Nebraska's best hope in facing not just this defense, but the other super talented defenses that are coming up. Or, you just get a lot of checkdowns, or there's a new wrinkle from the offense that they show that they haven't shown at all yet this season. But yeah, no, it's a Trey Palmer or bust.
I definitely agree, because hadn't even touched on it, but I mean, part of the reason why this Illinois defense is so good is because the run defense, second best in the whole nation, 77.9 rushing yards allowed per game, which is really impressive, considering, I mean, last 3 weeks, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, I mean, those are 3 teams that want to run the football and just couldn't get it done against Illinois. So, I anticipate, yes, Huskers will want to get Anthony Grant going, especially, since he didn't make a huge impact against Purdue either. But, I mean, how many 1-2 yard gains can you take before, you go back to the big play threat that you have with Trey Palmer? I mean, it's just the chance of popping a big play every time you look his way is just it's what's keeping this offense ticking. And I don't know what they could do to change that against Illinois. I mean, it's been the best offense that they have.
If it ain't broke,
don't fix it.
Leave it alone.
There we go. Well, yeah. I mean, we'll see how it shakes out, but I think we're very much in agreement on our game prediction, which is pretty rare. We're usually a few points off, but I'm going Illinois 28-20 in this one.
And I am Illinois 27, Nebraska 20.
And
we have like the same mindset in this. Like it's just not going to be a high scoring game. Yeah. Illinois' defense is really, really good, and I just don't think it's going to be like a Big 12 type showdown on Saturday.
Absolutely. I mean, I think back to the Rutgers game, which Rutgers, pretty decent defense. They've done a good job limiting most opponents. And, Nebraska struggles for a whole half, ends up with a 14-point performance. And yes, they can execute better against Illinois. They can, improve certain aspects from that game. But again, I mean, this is the best defense in the whole country, allowing about 10 points per game. Casey Thompson, Trey Palmer, these guys can test this team, and that's why I feel, comfortable putting Nebraska at 20, roughly doubling that season average. But it's really hard for me to see anything more than that.
Yep, we are in agreement on that one.
Yeah. So, it'll come down to, can they limit Chase Brown at all? Because, I thought it was, nice. Bill Bush on Wednesday, he was saying, this concept of stop the run, they're not going to rush for 4 total yards. It's limiting the run, which, obviously people kind of get that. But, I mean, it is important to make that clarification, because especially against a team like this, there's no stopping it. There's only just forcing them to pass more than they would probably like to.
Yeah, if Nebraska keeps Brown under 150 yards, I consider that a win. And people thinking that are like, what? Like, no. Well, let's just look at his entire season. Against Wyoming, 19 carries for 151 yards. Against Indiana, 36 for 199 yards. Virginia, 20 for 146. Chattanooga, 20 for 108, and they pulled him out early because they pulled everyone out early. Wisconsin, 25 for 129. Iowa, 31, 146. Minnesota, 41, 180. You're not stopping this guy.
Yeah.
You're not stopping this guy.
I mean, 150 yards, that's like an average performance for him. And knowing that Nebraska has a very below average run defense, I mean,
that's why
it's a good target.
That would be a win for me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge game for Illinois, which, by the way, hasn't had a winning season in an entire decade. So getting this win, that'll put them there. It'd keep them right there in the Big Ten West, leading the way, versus Nebraska. I mean, the opportunity that they have in this one, Purdue last week was a big game, to try to get that Big Ten West. But this one, I mean, it moved them into a tie for Illinois. It's a huge game, plenty to play for both teams. So hopefully some high-level execution that we see there on Saturday.
We'll find out, won't we?
Indeed. I mean, that'll be the test. A great Illinois defense coming here to Lincoln. What can the Huskers do to stop them? I mean, we'll see. And we'll be there for all the coverage. 2:30 kick. It's got a classic ABC feel to it. Should be nice fall weather. 50 to 60 degrees, a little bit of wind. Team practice outside today, by the way, in Memorial Stadium. Should try to acclimate for that, get ready for everything on Saturday. But I think that's all we got for our Illinois preview. Talking schedule, volleyball a little bit. Obviously, we'll be back at you next week with another podcast. But stay tuned out there on Saturday. Like I said, big game. A lot could go right. Could be another tough one, but we'll see how it shakes out. Awesome. Appreciate all of you tuning in to today's Life in the Red podcast. For Amie Just, I've been Luke Mullin. Appreciate all you watching.